We should be live. So we will welcome those on Facebook joining us for Havdalah with the bonus. And we will begin with the bonus with Rachel sharing a story.
Thank you. You were talking about, last week I mentioned that we're doing 3 weeks of greatest hits before we get to a Shavuot story. And it was interesting because last week Rabbi Barbara said she had not heard that story. And I think it was because I said it when you were unfortunately out with the broken hip or the hip replacement. This is a story that I may have done also at that time, but I have a feeling that you will have heard it and other people will probably heard some version of it, but it's a wonderful story. I happen to like this one because I also get to act a little bit. So there was a king who sat on his throne admiring his diamond ring. He turned it this way and that way as it caught the shimmering light and seemed to explode like crystals and sparkles everywhere. It was the absolutely most perfect, precious jewel in all of his kingdom. The only thing that was more precious to the king was his son, a little prince whose smile was almost as dazzling as a ring he would one day inherit from his father, as he would inherit his father's throne. So when the little boy clamored to wear the ring himself, it was very hard for the king to say no. "Oh, little one," the king said, "it is not a toy. This is not something to play with." The king tried to gather up the child who was whimpering and clinging to his father's leg. "Don't be sad," the king said. I'll give you something to play with. Here, take my crown." But the little boy just wailed louder and batted the gold crown away as if it were a bug. "But dearest one," the king tried, "the ring is very fragile, very delicate. You must be very careful with it." The little boy's tears quit as abruptly as they started. "Careful? I will be careful." He nodded very seriously, looking straight into his father's eyes, as only a 2-year-old can, almost irresistible. When his father was deciding whether to argue or to laugh, the little boy wrenched the ring off his father's finger, pressed it to his chest, and ran away. "Mine, it's mine, my ring," peals of laughter. Well, there's really no point in telling exactly what happened next. Let's just say, when the little boy returned, looking very sorry indeed, there was a crack in the diamond, a flaw in the king's perfect diamond, the royal ring ruined. Fix it? Impossible. You can't fix a diamond like you can fix a broken plate. Replace it? Impossible. You can't replace a diamond like that. As for a stained shirt, it's one thing of a kind. Wear it anyway? Oh, impossible. A king certainly cannot wear a diamond that is not absolutely perfect. But what is impossible for you and me is not so impossible for a king, or at least for a king to try. "I command that it be made perfect," the king proclaimed. "So shall it be." So the servants of the palace brought the ring from jeweler to jeweler in the city. When the jewelers first saw it, all of them agreed. It was beautiful. It's marvelous. And then they looked more closely. It's hopeless, useless. The diamond is cracked. There's nothing to do to make it perfect. Well, they had gone to every master jeweler in the kingdom. They schlepped up and down. There was absolutely no one else. Finally, in one of the back alleys, twisting in a part of the city where it was very poor, they found a jewelry store. And in this old Jewish quarter of the city, there was someone who disagreed. It was a jeweler, a little old man who looked so fragile that they were afraid almost to hand him the ring, said, "Oh, of course I can make it perfect." "How can you do that?" the servants demanded. "All the other jewelers, the master jewelers, the master craftsmen in the land said it was impossible." "There is nothing, no problem, no matter how big or small, They cannot be fixed, the jeweler answered. Besides, what makes something perfect? It's all in how you look at it. Well, the servants whispered among themselves, who does this jeweler think he is? How arrogant, boasting that he can fix a diamond that every master craftsman knows is impossible. But an order was an order, so the servants brought the jeweler before the king. Is this the one who can claim he can fix my ring? The king asked me flying suspiciously because it certainly didn't look like he'd made a grand living out of being a jeweler. It is, sire, said one of the servants. Of course he's probably lying. Should we take him to prison now? Of course not, you fools, the king said, waving them away. We'll give him a chance to fail first. As the servants led the jeweler away to the royal workshop, the king called after him, remember, it must be nothing short of perfect. The jeweler nodded pleasantly. The guards closed the workshop door behind him, and everyone settled down to wait. The jeweler worked all day and into the night. Finally, the guards peeked inside to make sure everything was okay. He's just strolling, they grumbled to each other. There's nothing he can do to fix that ring. A crack is a crack, it's ruined. But just then, the jeweler opened the workshop door, handed the guards a royal jewel box, and said he was finished. Ha ha, one of the guards said, I'll say you're finished when the king sees the ring is still ruined. It's going to be off to prison with you. Oh, I don't think so, the jeweler said calmly and quietly as they escorted him to the king's room. Not only did I fix the ring, I made it better. As I say, there's always nothing that can't be fixed. It's all in how you look at it. The king was waiting. The little prince was sitting on his lap, wriggling impatiently. The guards bowed and presented the royal jewel box. Your Majesty, they said, your ring. Ring, yelped the boy. Ring, Daddy, ring, give me my ring. And in a flash, he slid off his father's lap and was running straight for the ring. Oh, no, you don't, said his father, leaping up. This is how we got into this problem in the first place. But by then, the boy had grabbed the jewel box and flung it open. He tossed the box to the floor and held the ring up to his face. I'll be careful, he said. I'll be careful. Oh, and his eyes opened wide. It's a flower, Daddy, a flower, my flower. The king finally caught up with his son just in time to see what so delighted him. On the face of the great diamond, the jeweler had etched an exquisite tiny design. It was a rose, so perfectly rendered that it looked real. Each facet of the gem held another delicately unfolding petal, and the jeweler had transformed the ugly, jagged crack into the flower's sturdy stem. The king's eyes shone in the reflected light of his diamond. It was fixed. It was even better than before. It was perfect. So that's how you turn something that is not perfect into something perfect, by changing the way that you look at it and deciding that it's something else can be done with it than you didn't originally expect. So that is our story for tonight.
Thank you. So I want to share about the 5th week that we are entering into of the counting of the Omer, and give us some more food for thought. I think it flows nicely from the story, actually, as well. This is from Rabbi Karen Kadar's material on the Omer accounting, that the theme for the 5th week, which starts tonight, is to imagine. And so that's why I think it ties in beautifully with the story. And the text is from Exodus chapter 3, and God said, I will take you to a land flowing with milk and honey. So while God declared it was a land flowing with milk and honey, it really wasn't, because the land had date palms tall and ready to yield their fruit that could become honey, and it had goats grazing peacefully on the sides of mountains ready to give milk. And we bless God who brings forth bread from the earth, but God doesn't. Rather, the fields are abundant with golden grain waiting for harvest and waiting for human endeavor. the sustenance from milk, the satisfaction from bread, the sweetness of honey all require us to see what is, to imagine what could be, and then create what we can. So this is the secret of our power, and the secret of that jeweler in the story we just heard, to see the invisible, to pull back the veil that obscures all that is good, to bear witness to what is possible despite what others believe is merely probable, to look at what is and see what could be, to see the path to hope, to courage, to meaning, and to purpose. Magnificence is possible, and joy is possible. This is the secret to our power. It is to imagine, and then to create. I doubt we're going to be etching exquisite roses in the tops of diamonds, but we can all create in so many ways of our own. To step out of the darkness that blinds us to possibility, and to see what our accomplishments, to see that our accomplishments begin with potential, with an idea, with a thought, and then to envision ourselves as capable of so much more, to behold and then to make manifest. So as we move in to this next week of the counting of the Omer, that is where we are on our journey. And actually I will be meeting with Rabbi Brown on Tuesday for us to plan a bit more about what we're going to be doing for Shavuot, part of it together, because we're counting there and we are past the halfway point. Actually, Lag BaOmer is later this week, the 33rd day of the Omer, which is a holiday in its own right as well. And tomorrow is actually Pesach Sheni, so there's a second Passover. So anyone, when the temple stood and there were the sacrifices, anyone who was unable to participate in Passover a month ago now is obligated to do it now. And it's one day, not 7. And they were supposed to eat of the Paschal lamb, the sacrifice, and have unleavened bread for that one day. So if someone was unclean at the time, or later on it would be if they were fighting to defend the country or something and they couldn't observe it the initial time, this was the second time. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember people saying, well, we can't gather for Passover, but maybe we'll be able to by second Passover. Of course, that wasn't the case either that year or really the next year. So this idea that we get a second chance and a second time, if something's important, if we don't get to do it the first time around, that we can do it a second time, is, I think, a pretty cool thing in the tradition. So if you, Yom Kippur Katan is actually right before Rosh Chodesh each month, that there's a Yom Kippur Katan. So if you couldn't do Yom Kippur when it falls, you have other opportunities. So while we have this system and the calendar and all of that, we have second chances. We have other opportunities. So it all fit in the story too well, Rachel. So the ring's perfect, and then once it gets a scratch, it can never be fixed. But if you can see and imagine beyond what it was before, that jeweler made it into something even better. So we all have the potential to do that in our lives. So if you'll join with me in the counting of the Omer, it is the 29th day. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat haomer. Praised be you, Adonai, our God, who rules the universe, instilling within us the holiness of mitzvot by commanding us to count the Omer. So starting tonight, it is the 29th day, 4 weeks and 1 day of the Omer. So we get the opportunity each Saturday of starting the new theme for the new week. So I am going to share the Havdalah blessings now in the chat so that we can make a Havdalah together and have that opportunity as well, and marking time and counting time and counting the hours and the days and all these kinds of things. And get this together. So I have the blessings, and I'll do the last part as well, and then we will be ready to say goodbye to Shabbat for the week. I gave it a little bit longer before we made Havdalah tonight. Okay, so I invite you to light your candles. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech haolam, Borei peri hagafen, Borei peri hagafen. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech haolam, Borei minei v'samim, Borei minei v'samim. We've had the sweetness of the fruit of the vine, and now we've smelled the fragrance of the spices. Now we move on to the candle for the warmth and the light. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech haolam, Borei me'orei ha'esh, Borei me'orei ha'esh. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech haolam, Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, ben or lechoshech, ben yom hashvi'i לששת ימי המעשה. ברוך אתה אדוני המבדיל בין קודש לחול. We praise God who distinguishes between the sacred and profane, between light and darkness, between the seventh day of the week and the 6 days of creation, 6 days of the week, and the seventh day, the Sabbath. We take a few more moments to savor Shabbat. When you're ready, we'll put our candles out in our wine or juice. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi, V'meira v'yamenu, Yavo Eleinu, Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Hagiladi. I invite you to unmute so we can sing together Shavua Tov. Shavua
Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, a good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase. Good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign and joy increase.
I wish you a Shavua Tov. So I just realized I put this shirt on. Miriam and Yocheved, Batya, and Shifra, and Batya, Tzipora, Shifra, and Pua, all the women of the story of the Exodus. And it's now second Pesach. I didn't even think of that when I put the shirt on.
Good timing.
Yeah. So Shavua Tov, and we wish everyone on Facebook Shavua Tov, and we'll see you next Friday evening for the beginning of Shabbat or next Saturday for Havdalah.